Okay, we are now live. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for tonight's edition of People of the Pandemic. My name is Gilbert Crispin. I am a board member with Avancé Ensemble, the wonderful organization that brings you all of this great content time and again. Tonight I'm really honored to be amongst three amazing, brilliant, beautiful women who are so thoughtful and kind, and they're going to have so much to say. I'm going to let them each introduce themselves. But again, I want to thank you for joining us. COVID has hit us all in so many different ways, and we're looking forward to kind of learning a bit more about how it's affected us, how we can navigate through it, and what we've learned from it. So I'll start with Amaral. Please introduce yourself. And I think Amaral froze. So we'll go to Shirley for a minute. But this is actually exactly what the pandemic is. This is real life. This isn't staged. This is just how it is, right? You're on a call for work. You're talking to a friend or your parent, and then the technology goes out. So I think Amaral's back. So Amaral, okay, please introduce yourself.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I apologize for that. We're still working out the technology this many months in. You would think we would have figured it out by now. I am Amaral Jambar. I am a proud member of the Avancé Ensemble family. I am an entrepreneur, a mother, a wife, a survivor of this pandemic. I have not had COVID myself, but just the process of living through it with everyone else. And I'm happy to be a part of this conversation this evening, just to talk about what our own experiences have been navigating throughout this unprecedented time in all of our lives.
Awesome. And for you, Shirley, please introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. I am a proud extended member of the Avancé Ensemble family. Y'all know I had to get that.
You family, ain't no extension.
I am an attorney by trade, but I'm a mom, an entrepreneur, a wife, and I think my role is really just trying to help people navigate both processes of the pandemic, the social justice issues that have come up during the pandemic, and how we navigate this entire conversation as people are trying to see their way through. So I'm ecstatic to be here and have this conversation.
Thank you. And Sarah, now I've heard so many wonderful things about Sarah. My wife has, told people, listen, go talk to Sarah. She's amazing. She's wonderful. But this is my first time meeting you. So Sarah, it's such an honor to meet you. And please tell us about yourself.
Hi, everybody. I am Sarah Elise, and I am a licensed therapist. And this pandemic has been, because I do work primarily with women, and I own Sound Mind Wellness Center, which is a therapy practice focusing on women's mental health. So you can imagine what we've been going through, myself and my clients as well. I am so happy to be a part of this panel with all these wonderful people. Nice to meet you guys.
Wonderful, thank you. So I guess I'll go kind of, right to Sarah, but I want to get everyone's thoughts on something. Sancho recently posted something online that spoke to, specifically in the Haitian community, violence, right, with men against women. And with Sarah, you just mentioning the mental health component for women, because you focus primarily on women or people who identify as women as clients. What has the pandemic done to the minds of, some of the women you see?
What I've noticed is, with the clients that I've been working with, is the pandemic has exacerbated their anxiety. Because you can imagine, I was already working with women who were, dealing with anxiety. Now with the pandemic, with all of the uncertainties that are going on, everything that you keep hearing in the news, and with everything that's happening around us, their anxiety has gone through the roof, to the point where even within their own relationships, whether it's a romantic relationship or just relationships with at work, it has affected it on all different levels. That's what
Let me interject for 1 second, Sarah. Faut parler de anxiety, parce que Haïtien pas connaît ça. So ça veut dire. Pour Haïtien qui écoute là, what does anxiety mean? What is it really? Because Haitians don't believe in anxiety. So talk to me like, like I'm 2 years old. What is anxiety?
The thing about anxiety is we all experience it. It's an emotion. We all experience it. The point where it becomes a problem is when it affects your functioning. So anxiety is how you start to feel nervous or over worry about something. And most of the time we experience that, right? But when it becomes a problem is when, okay, now it's affecting my relationships, it's affecting your productivity, especially during this pandemic. It's affecting how you see things, how you view the world, and how you see the future. So yes, anxiety is real. Moi, connais un pile haïtien penser, just with mental health overall. Yo pense ba ça c'est pas un problème sous commencer parler de mental health, ça veut dire fou, sous I want therapy, ça veut dire fou. No, your mental health is the state of your mental health. We always forget about the word health and we focus on mental, and that's where the stigma lies. But it's really like the state of your mental health overall. So anxiety, we all experience it.
Got it. And I guess I'll go to Emerald and then to Shirley. Emerald, for you, you wear so many hats, right? So I guess the first one I'd like to kind of touch on a bit is, your financial hat. Obviously you're a real estate agent. What has this pandemic, Emerald, done in terms of, people who are looking to buy or rent homes? What has it done to them? And then there's a component, obviously, we've heard about, the moratorium expiring. So people are potentially going to get kicked out of their homes. What does this mean?
As far as how the pandemic has impacted real estate in general, I think real estate is a great, is something great to look at, to realize how different people have been impacted differently. Because while people are being kicked out of their homes, and while evictions are going on, and while real estate is actually booming as a business. As a business, we in March, early April, when all this was going on, my office would have meetings and we would discuss, just hunkering down and figuring out ways, just like everyone else was doing. And then maybe halfway through the summer, when we really started looking at stats and looking at where we've been the past few months, ironically, real estate as a business is actually doing well. And part of the reason that that's happening, then I'm going to circle back around to the rental part of it. Part of the reason why that's happening is that there's more demand than there is inventory. There are more people, or the same number of people that would have been looking right now may still be looking for homes, because there are people who still have jobs. There are people who still need to move. People are still relocating. People are still taking jobs in other places and moving around. So that's still going on. The regular activity of people needing shelter is still going on. But at the same time, a lot less people are selling their homes. A lot less people who have an option are moving around. So therefore you have higher demand than you do supply. And what happens when supply is lower than demand it's lower than demand, prices go up. So if in South Florida's median prices in Dade Broward County, about 310, 320 properties.
Yo, 310?
Yes, sir. Median, middle.
Median, Amarel, dis-toi haïtien sa median vle di. Si nou pat kon matematik, sa vle di median.
Sa vle di pri nan mi-tan.
Exactement.
Gen an pe pi wo, gen an pe pi ba, mais nan mi-tan, 310, 320. And to be honest with you, at 310, 320, families that are looking for a single family home are struggling to find one in our area, Dade Broward, Palm Beach County. families are struggling to find one. So what does that mean? When we're already in a market that inventory is low, what happens is that when you do find one, you're in a bidding war. I don't know, for you, you literally have 10 offers. I had a listing, this happened, the first time this happened over the summer, I had a listing that we priced slightly over where we were. And I stopped taking showing requests within 2 days
Wow.
because the requests were overwhelming. And
Wow.
it shows that there are a lot of people searching for homes in a particular price point that aren't finding them. And where that extends to, as far as rentals are concerned, I've had a boost in rental activity over the past few months, and it's happening there also because those that may still have jobs or are moving in order to get jobs are finding that even in the rental market, this is happening. And with the moratorium that expires this at the end of this year, which is just in a couple of days, there are a couple of things that people didn't realize, that the moratorium on evictions mostly applied to property owners, I won't say homeowners, property owners, landlords who own properties that had government-backed loans.
Mm.
So technically, if I owned my property free and clear, or if I had some other type of loan that was not government backed, there was no moratorium on my actually evicting my tenants. There was no moratorium on that. So there were still evictions being filed. There
Wow.
are still evictions that are being filed. One of the things that we've kind of come to realize, and it's not necessarily anecdotal as far as how everyone's doing business, but a lot of the courts are moving slower
Mm.
on executing these things. So
Right.
even though evictions are still being filed, and they're not even being filed at the numbers that we think that they would be, the courts are open virtually. People are receiving notices on their doors, and it's still very much a part of the conversation, even though this is going to expire come the 31st. And on the flip side of that, I want to say, just because I'm somewhere in the middle, there are landlords who are retired people or whichever, who rely on the income from their rental properties in
Yeah.
order to feed their families, in order to live
Mm-hmm.
their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times when we hear about it in the media, and I'm not one of those, the media is always out to get us, but a lot of times what's being reported on are the evictions and not the other side of it. And the government is who has failed both sides. If
Yeah.
we figured out how to, at the very least, put some money out there in the middle to help with rent payments instead of just moratorium, because the debt didn't go away. The debt
Correct.
didn't go. I know a gentleman who has a $2,000, and I'm going to stop talking. I can be long-winded on this subject. Who has a $2,000 rental payment. Well, when you haven't paid your rent in 3 months, that's $10,000. Most people cannot come up with 2 months rent, less what, 5
Yeah.
months rent. So although the moratorium has pushed back evictions, it has done nothing to actually mitigate the debt. So there's scary times are still ahead for a lot of people.
Before I go to Shirley, I mean, it's, hard for me. I think, my wife and I do okay, but, financially, but 310,000 seems like such a big number. It really just seems like such a massive number. And, I'm trying to kind of wrap my head around, what ultimately do you do? Like you said, if you're in these multiple showings, people are offering cash. I don't have 310,000 laying around. And I think one thing, that's important for our community to always realize, acheter kaila se yun, for meubler kaila, okay, for get down payment pour kaila, for pay tax pour kaila. There are these other things that I think sometimes we tend to, I don't know if we forget or if we overlook or if it's just anxious, right? I think sometimes also what happens, there's this, to Saya's point earlier about anxiety, there's this level of anxiety happening with our community. If you don't buy today, you're never going to be able to buy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So do you just stretch yourself now and you pay the 350, even though you're not there, to really prevent yourself from potentially paying 405 or 390 next year? It's a very, very scary thing. And I guess, that kind of takes me right to Shirley. Shirley, you wear so many hats, so all of these things come into play, obviously. So, as a wife and a mother, Shirley, and then the social justice piece on the other side, how have you managed all of that in the pandemic? First of all, for you personally, but then second of all, from some of the families, that you help advocate for, what are they experiencing?
No.
So I'm gonna kind of hop on the anxiety bus for a little bit, because I think in both hats, there's a lot of anxiety. And I think Sarah said it best. When you're talking as a wife, there's a lot of people that are living right now where people that they realize, maybe I don't like you too much, right? I love you, but I don't necessarily like you, right? We've had to come to grips with some realities, because when everybody's on the move, you really don't have time to pay attention to the likes and the dislikes. And then there are some other people, because life was happening, that the slowdown kind of had them rekindle some stuff that they were on the verge of losing, right? So there's been the good and the bad. So the anxiety is real. For me, I can say that one of my greatest anxieties is the fact that I work with young people. So my fear of my child not being in school always experiencing, that's that technology again, is my child experiencing that lapse, that gap, that slide. So that being home, I can tell you as a mom, I want my son in school, right? Because I feel like listen, the dreads, they about not to be here real soon. But, and Saya shaking her head, it just takes a whole nother level of patience. It takes another level of understanding. And a lot of what I'm often teaching or, helping parents do now, I'm forced to have to practice, and I've got to learn when to walk away. I need to know when I just need to throw my hands up and be like, this ain't the time. I just can't do this. And I had to also learn, part of my anxiety is to understand that I'm not made to be a teacher. So I take my hat off to all the educators that do this, because this time has forced us to sit back and say, maybe the things we took for granted, maybe we shouldn't be taking it for granted. The teachers, the educators, the folks who actually pour into our kids in addition to us, these support systems, so this moment had really caused me, not that I didn't have a level of appreciation, but my appreciation increased for sure. But I think in the role of just being a woman, still caring about your household, wanting to make sure that you can provide, there's a lot of report that's telling you that women now are being forced to leave the market because they're staying home providing for the kids. They're staying home having to do this virtual work. So now we're reverting back to a lot of the things women fought so hard against, because they wanted to be out in the field. They wanted to be the breadwinner. And now a lot of women are having to make this decision. Do I go back to work, or do I leave the workforce so that I can be the provider that my child needs me to be? And that's an anxiety. I think the other anxiety that I personally feel is, I'm a mover and a shaker, so I'm always going. But in this time, forcibly, I'm standing still, right? So I'm constantly thinking in my head, how can I be more impactful? What can I do differently? How do I not become lazy and, miss the moment, for lack of better terms? So, and then you're always thinking, as women, we're always thinking about the next goal, right? So that anxiety of, am I accomplishing my goal? Did I, for the people who are buying the house, the people that have this long bucket list of what they want to accomplish by the time 2020 is over, well, damn, 2020 is damn near over, and
nothing happened.
A lot of that stuff didn't get done. And that's that's a reality and a fear for a lot of people, right? So those anxieties are real. And I think on the flip side, when we talk about what we're seeing in the midst of COVID, we have an entire other pandemic happening, which is a pandemic of social justice and the pandemic of young people being shot on the streets, not just by police, but by, Black on Black crime. So there's a lot happening. You have moms that are losing their kids to the streets. You have moms who are fearful that when their child walks outside of that door, they're praying that they don't have to run into an officer, because these have all been compounded into our day-to-day of 2020. So the pandemic hasn't, and then let's not negate the fact that the pandemic really just highlighted all of the inequities that we knew. It just made it in big, bright letters for us all over the place. Inequities, injustices, whether it be health, housing, finance, everything that we've always known has just been, it's slapped in our face, and now we don't have a choice. but to deal with it. So that raises our level of anxiety as well. So I think what we're asking families to do, and as we advocate for these families, many people are at the end of the road, right? Many people just don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And what you're advocating for, they're telling you, Miss Shirley Powell, I don't see it, whether it's TPS, whether it's immigration, whether it's a lack of job. You're trying to preach one thing, but what they're living, that lived experience, is a whole different ballgame for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting when you think about, you know, the piece about being a woman in this space. I think my internet connection is unstable. Let me just say, Xfinity, so I apologize because it's constantly an issue with these folks. But Saya, how do you have a conversation with? It's across the board. Oh, you have problems with them too, Shirley?
Yep.
You know, this is good actually. You know what's frustrating? The whole cable system is monopoly, right?
Yes,
So you basically have these two, I'm sorry for y'all at home, but we just taking a quick detour. You have these two companies, or maybe that you can choose from, and it's the lesser of two evils. They're both bad. They're both equally bad. So you're forced to pick. You go to one, okay, you save $7 for a month, and then once the little contract's up, you're back paying more. It's so annoying. It's just so annoying. And then, you know, you're using this for your work. You're using this for everything now. This is
everything.
Now,
9 months in.
As I was saying to you guys, earlier,
you know, now.
I was saying to you guys earlier, if I'm a little shaky for those who are on the live, it's because I got a new router because the internet has been shaky. Tried to install it before this and it didn't work out. So without any equipment, I'm now on live holding my phone. So this is, trust me, right up my alley.
It's insane, right? This is problematic. So
Pandemic
I wanted to
life.
ask Saya, how do you begin to have a conversation with your partner about, I don't want to be the one to take a back seat. I actually don't want to be the one to, you know, go home or leave the workforce. I want you to be that person, right? Whatever their gender is. Where do you start that conversation?
I would say in the beginning, be honest with how you feel. Like with me, to give an example for, you know, myself, I like to be, you know, set an example. Whenever I tell someone to do something, I've done it myself. So beating around the bush is not going to help it. We have to be comfortable to have those uncomfortable conversations with our partners. During these times, like for me, I've had to pivot. Where I've had to switch my office from, you know, my practice from fully in person to online without having, you know, the resources or even the knowledge on how to do that, and had to do it quickly. And also while doing that, having to have the kids in virtual school. So I had that conversation with my husband, and we talked about, you know, we have certain gender roles within, you know, relationships, and we talked about that. What are your expectations? Ask your partner what his or her expectations are for how, you know, you guys are going to navigate this pandemic and how it's going to affect your household. I encourage people not to beat around the bush and to really say how you feel. Sit down with each other. Yes, it's affecting us both, but this household, we are in a partnership with each other. Even if you don't live together and you are managing, having children together, some days the child might be with you, still have that conversation, because that might be something where you have one parent, the child is with the parent a couple of days because they might have shared custody. we don't think about that as well. And then you have to think about, okay, how is it affecting me? How is it affecting you? How is it affecting us? How is it affecting the unit? How is it affecting the kids? But definitely do not beat around the bush. Have the conversation. Be direct. And also, if it becomes a problem where we can't have the conversation, I've had to tell people, see a couples counselor. Even for one session, if you have to sit down and actually have a mediator, somebody who's a neutral party, to be able to have those uncomfortable conversations with them. But definitely don't beat around the bush, talk about it.
So this is really good. I think that's really helpful. I'll go around the room. In the pandemic, and everyone please answer, what has been your biggest fight with your partner? Like, what's been the biggest fight you've had, or what has it been about in the pandemic? I'll have to think. So as you guys are answering, I'll think.
I would say the equal share of the homework, like that educational responsibility, an equal share of that, because I feel like I do 99.9% of it, and the accolades come to all of us, but the work. So I think the biggest, when the good grades come in, oh my God, but then I got to do the work. I got to do the homework. I got to make sure we're prepping for tests and spelling tests. So I think our biggest argument has been about, you can pick up some of this load, like happily, you can do this today. So that's been the one for me.
Still thinking.
I have it. I'm ready.
Sarah's like, pick me.
Listen, our biggest, I wouldn't say biggest fight, because I want to say I've worked on communicating with my husband in a way where he can understand, but it has been me communicating with the teachers and him helping me pick up that load. It's to the point now I'm like, listen, I'm on strike for the next, once they come back, I'm on strike for 2 weeks or even a month. You will be communicating with the teachers, and you would have to go on and see what work they have to do, because again, we are both parents. And not saying that, he's a one. Listen, I'm not saying that. So anybody who's watching this live, don't go tell my husband that I'm saying he's an amazing husband. But sometimes people don't, it's so much going on right now. Sometimes people are not aware that they aren't helping. Now, that is not to condone people who are aware and they're just ignoring it. It's so much going on that sometimes people are just not aware. And that's where I go back to saying, like, you have to tell people how you feel. You have to tell them how they are affecting you, especially with your partner. So yeah, that's been my biggest hurdle, the communication with the teachers, because my kids are still at home doing virtual learning, and we have to communicate via an app. And I have a young one who he's a great child. He's a great child, but he will text you. So I get several messages during the day, and mind you, I can't check those messages because I'm seeing clients during the day, and he's working during the day. So it's like trying to figure out how our lives, our professional lives, can align with our personal lives.
That is definitely in line. Our son's only 4, so he's not in virtual school, he's in mommy school, which means mommy creates the curriculum and then try to actually get it out there. I love when a parent is about to speak about their child and they preface it by saying, he's an awesome child. Because I know we know that's parent speak, we know. I think communication definitely has been we're not like Sarah shared, we're not fighters per se. But the one thing that has stuck out is in line with what the other ladies had shared. It's the way that I have put it is, there is more going on than what you see. Because what we opted to do, since I have the more flexible schedule, so it was definitely a conversation, but I think it was a foregone conclusion, who would be doing what. Thankfully, my husband's a college professor, and his school chose very early on that they were going to go virtual. But for our sake, we tried it over the summer. He taught 2 classes, trying to have X number of hours of quiet time with myself and the 4-year-old. It just wouldn't work. So we did it over the summer. And what we decided to do is that he would go to work every day. He teaches virtually, but he teaches virtually from his desk in his office. So he leaves like it's a regular day every day. And the one big challenge had been, you come home at the end of the day. And I don't want to go through the stressors of this, was all the ups and downs and bad. When we have to, we will. And I can remember an opinion being shared, and my taking a breath and realizing you actually are not fully aware of what really goes on here all day. What really goes on, because I am still working. I am still, thankfully, between himself and family and grandparents, I can go into the office on Mondays and Fridays. But there's still work that needs to be done in between. And then the wonderful 4-year-old. So the combination of all of that, I think, was not being communicated on a regular basis. Like, no, it is an S show around here. But by the time you get home, we've all kind of calmed down from it, and we're all kind of good. So it's like, oh, my loving family, come and hug daddy. So great to see you. And there's no point in regurgitating all of that if it's not something important. So I think I let it pile up a little too long and had to say, like, no, there's mad craziness.
That's really, I mean, it's so interesting that for so many of us, it's communication. I think probably mine was similar. I think there was a period of time in the beginning of the pandemic, it was fancy loose and, foot free and fancy loose. Everything was great and amazing. And then there came this period of time where work just got crazy for me. And so the time my wife and I normally would spend together kind of got cut in probably 3/4. And I don't know that I did a great job of communicating, like, hey, this is what this new period is going to look like for the next, I don't know, month and a half or 2 months. So I think there was definitely an issue there in terms of me not communicating that, and there being an expectation like, well, what are you doing? We just had 8 months where you were readily available, and now you working all the time. So I think, communication is the key. During COVID, during a pandemic, I think Shirley brought up a great point earlier. You love someone, but, loving someone and living with and experiencing someone, day in and day out, up teen hours a day, it's not easy. And I always say, I don't experience myself, right? So I happen to think I'm this phenomenal person and partner, but I don't know that. I don't experience myself, so it's probably not fully accurate. But I think communication.
As Shirley brought up, the amount of time, you don't realize the amount of time you spend apart actually makes you appreciate each other more.
Right.
And I remember seeing this meme that said the daytime parents need to come back and pick up their kids. Because I was not appreciative enough of, they allow me, they're giving him an education, definitely, but teachers allow us to do us.
Yeah.
To live the life that you're living, to run the businesses that we're running. It's because we know that our children are in a safe environment. And this pandemic has really revealed to many of us, that we are not, and I hope that we realize it as a country as we move forward, that we have not been fair. We have not truly appreciated what it is to be with our children for 8 hours of their waking day. What's
interesting, Amra, if you think about it, like if you do simple mathematics, right? What do people pay for daycare per month? Like, what's the number?
$1,000, $1,200.
Okay, so let's say you take $1,000 as a round number, right? And you put, $1,000 a month. We send our kids to public school for free. We put this teacher with 15, 18, 20 people, and we pay them $40,000. It just doesn't add up, right? Like, so even simple mathematics, even if you said that, okay, at a certain age, they're sustainable to a degree, and you cut that number in a fourth, it still doesn't add up. Like the math just doesn't add up. And I think you're right. We have to understand that, okay, it's time that we start looking at, it's time we start valuing things and people differently. I think one of the things that I'll go around and chat with you guys and find out some of the good things in the pandemic. I think for us, my wife and I, we conceived, right? We're due for a baby like in a month. So
baby.
Thank you. So that was really exciting. And I think, in large part, Ebony's super busy, always running around. I have a pretty busy life. So I think this pandemic forced us both to slow down and just stop. And obviously have a lot of sex, but on the other end, it just forced us to slow down and say, okay, there's less stress. There's, the ability to decompress. You're not waking up and going somewhere 8 a.m., 9 a.m. and leaving at 5, 6 or whatever that is. And they often say that stress is such a big factor in terms of having a kid. So I think that's one of the really good things. Another thing, that was really good, and I don't know how you guys felt about this, but I felt like I got so much more, financially, the pandemic was good for us, right? But that's a very privileged thing, right? Because we're both working people, we both work from home, we were able to work from home, we both had internet. But the people oftentimes who are the most susceptible to anything going wrong are the ones who have to work the hardest to survive. So it's really funny, like it's weird to be in this position because that there's a person across the street or down the street from you that is definitely not living like you, and they're going to work every day, they're exposed. And if they don't go to work, they don't eat, right? If they don't physically go into a building or a place, they do not eat. So I guess, I want to talk about a couple of things. One, what are some of the good things that came out of the pandemic for you guys, if any? And then, how do you feel about kind of being in this place where, you're able to work from home and you guys advocate for people and have maybe friends and family who are living complete polar opposites and that they're struggling?
I want to take that one on because as I was listening to everyone, it kind of, and I'm happy you went there because as I was listening to all of our comments, right, I worked from home and I heard Saya say I had to move my practice, right? And I'm listening to Amarel talk about her business and I'm listening to, and instantly it hit us that we don't even realize a lot of our conversations are from a point of privilege, right? Because I hope that we never forget homelessness is real, right? Mental health is real. Anxiety, as we started, is real. Joblessness is real. Death. I mean, many people experience not just one distant person down the street that lost mom, dad, and, so a lot of what's happening with COVID, and to Gil's point, is really about we're blessed and privileged, it's almost kind of scary to say because like you say, we're able to work from home. Many of us are 2-parent households. Imagine what a single parent may be dealing with who still has to get up and go to work and be one of what we call, they gave them these real pretty names, but they were always important workers from the get-go. We just didn't value them, right? So imagine what that parent, be it a mom or a dad, must be going through. And, I want us to never think about the decision when many of us, Saya and myself, just said we have kids that are home. Imagine the choice that a parent has to make. I know the numbers are going up, but I don't have a choice and I need to send my child to school. And then let's talk about, some of the other barriers. You have parents that want to keep the child home, but that don't speak a language, that don't have the technological savviness to do the work. So in the midst of this pandemic, I think it just revealed so many of our real issues as a community, the Haitian community specifically. And I think long term, because even with the conversation of vaccines, even as we move forward, I think we need to be prepared for a community that may not be ready to pivot, right? Because we saw what happened with taxis and Ubers. Clearly, we're seeing what's going to happen. This new normal that we're dealing with, it will be a new normal for a long time. How many of our Haitian community members are ready to take that on, right? So in the midst of this COVID, I want us to never forget that a lot of times we're speaking because who knew it's the norm, right? It's the norm, but I want us to never forget tout que conseil de monde qui conseil de décision, c'est pas parce que yo vle, choix pas nommé, right? La vie a pas, it's not as easy for them to make this decision, or they're in a two-parent relationship or what have you. Let's not forget about the parents that are dealing with kids with special needs. The school was only their way out, right? Because they don't know how to deal with this. Correct. So I think there's a lot going on so if there is any positive to come out of this, it highlighted some of the real issues that we have as a community moving forward, and some of the real work that we need to do to prepare this community for the next phase of who we are going to be as a people. But I also think if there's any positive, is that it has forced us to be empathetic, because but for grace, it could have easily been one of us, whether directly or indirectly, only but for grace that it's not us, or, we didn't experience it as much. So for me, I think if there's any positive that's come out of it, it's made us humanize one another a lot more, because when 9/11, we lost 2,900 people, 2,977. And in the past 2 weeks, we've lost 3,000 people daily. So these numbers begin to amount to lives. So at some point, you've got to value life. You've got to value each other, because this pandemic showed us that it doesn't know race, it doesn't know color, it doesn't know age, it doesn't know class. None of that matters. So we've had to learn to respect people for who they are, and hopefully we can empathize with one another a little bit better. I hope
that's something that we've actually learned, because that's one of the, not to get political, but all things are political. I think that's one of the things that has really bothered me the most with how this pandemic has been politicized. There's you over there and there's us over here, and there's no in between. To hear people who are, for the most part, activists and working in the community and giving therapy to the community, you for the most part would make the assumption these people are on the liberal side of social justice and taking care of people. And at the same time, we can hold that position and still say, I want my kid to go back to school. I want my kid to go back to school. And unfortunately, too often over the past, throughout this thing, the conversation has been those that want their kids to go back are these type of people, and those that don't are this other type of people. And realizing, no, it's not, I don't have to be in one political camp or another, and it otherizes us. So people are thinking, oh, you all obviously care nothing about the economy. I'm a business owner. I care about the economy. I also care about people. I also care about my health and the health of the people around me. We can be more than one thing. And I really hope, and unfortunately, I don't see it enough around me to be as hopeful as Shirley seems to be, that we can find that common ground, that we can understand that my wanting social justice and my wanting the leaders of this country to do the thing of taking care of us as a group. Asking for government to govern is not the same thing as asking for socialism and a handout. During times like this, when these big things are happening to us, to all of us, and what I do individually is not sufficient to actually remedy what's going on, we're looking to government to do that. So going back to where we started with what's going on with evictions, what's going, and coming back down to here, what's going on just with with people locally, it's hopefully people getting the understanding that we want to actually go back to a normal life. I do not want the government to shut down. It was not exciting for me. I got some rest, great, but it's not exciting for me for all things to be shut down. But at the same time, we also want the people that lead us to come up with a plan with a plan, sending my kid back to school. And I would love for my kid to go back to school. I would absolutely love it. Gives us the freedom to do the things that we need to do. But do we want to send them back and God forbid the worst happens and something is brought home? We have grandparents that we love. We have people that we're around that we love. So it's really, I'm hoping that we have acquired that empathy, that we have been able to look at other people's situations. It might have been maybe 4 weeks in. I think it was that long when I actually stopped and thought to myself, because it's pretty calm around here. Everyone's kind of moving around and doing their thing. Like you ladies, I run around a lot. So honestly, the first month or 2 months of the pandemic was actually being able to do nothing without the guilt of doing nothing, because there's always something to do, was actually a relief for me. And it must have been a month in when I stopped to think to myself, or maybe I saw something on the news and I stopped to think to myself, there are people who are in homes with people that they are not safe with.
Yeah.
That they're not safe with. This is not a moment where it's like, I'm glad I'm having this breather.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding that while for us, and I agree with Shirley, and I was thinking the same word, this is a position of privilege to be able to say that my biggest concern is, oh, we're not communicating enough about whatever, which is of importance to me. There are people who cannot eat. There are people who are on the verge of being evicted, who have never been in a food line before and are finding that I need to go stand in line to pick up food to feed my family. And as a community, us finding ways to actually reach for one another. I just hope that we don't forget what we've been through. We don't forget the empathy. We don't forget what teachers have done. We don't forget that our essential workers, as we have decided to call them, essential, were essential back then too. And I'll say one last thing. When Shirley said that, I used to work for a hotel, front desk at a hotel. And I remember the big guys walking around in their suits, the general manager and the catering manager and all these guys, and seeming very, very important. And I thought to myself once, there are a lot more people if housekeeping did not come to work today, if everyone in housekeeping was like, we all have a cold today.
Come on.
But yet, the people that are revered are those that are sitting behind the desk. But this would not work. And I, as an employer, strive to be that, to remember what it is to be that, and in my small way. And I only hope that, like Shirley said, we don't forget. We don't forget that the people making minimum wage are actually the most important people in our economy. Amazon made trillions. They would have made nothing if those people were not stacking those boxes.
I think that one thing that that can't be understated too, Morel, to your point, is that the people that are working behind the front desks and working, cleaning the rooms, they often look like you and I. And if we're not honest, I mean, the most, we have to be honest about the fact that the people who are revered tend to not be Black or brown, in most cases. So it's very easy. So much of this is also very status quo, right? It's this person, like you said, this general manager or whatever. Well, we happen to benefit. Maybe just we got lucky, right? We really, I mean, it's really, I think to both of your points, by the grace of God, we just happen to be lucky to be in the positions we're in. But unfortunately, our skin color and our ethnic backgrounds really doesn't preclude us from being in those positions either, where we were too cleaning rooms, right? Where we are generally the cleaners, where we are generally behind the desks and not often the general managers and not often the vice presidents and so on and so forth. And I think, obviously, to Dr. Shirley's point earlier, how do you move a community? Because this highlights this, but this isn't a microcosm, right? This is the real deal, and this is continuous, right? So to Shirley's point, with Uber and the taxis, right? With anything, with the cash points of sales that no longer require a cash register or cash attendant or registration attendant, with the, we used to have the people who got paid very well, and many of them were Haitians of Hispanic descent. The people who would take at the tolls, in the 80s and 90s, toll booth workers were making $24 an hour, So, and now obviously they're gone, right? We don't have them anymore. So for many years, our community has had these positions basically be taken away. It's not enough to say, in my opinion, okay, let's teach the new generation how to code and let's teach them tech. All that shit's really fun and cool and all of that. But the fact is, you still have hundreds of thousands of people now and hundreds of thousands of people that will turn 45 and 50 that will potentially live for another 40 years. What the hell are we going to do with them, right? How are we going to get them to a place that they can be sustainable? Because the fact of the matter is, we know, yes, that Amazon is building a warehouse in every community, and we know that 40% of those jobs are going to be by robots, manned by robots, and they're aiming for 60 and 70 and 80. So innovation is a beautiful thing, to be honest, except for when you're Black or Haitian or even Hispanic. And I don't think we talk about that enough. And that's the piece for me. I mean, I have a great level of anxiety, not for myself. I think generally, okay, I'll be okay. But I have a great level of anxiety for people that look like me, people that sound like me. And what do we do? What is even a step one? Because I hate when people say, oh, well, just teach them how to use Word. Yo, that shit don't mean nothing. It means nothing. Oh, teach them how to use. We talked about Zoom, right? And Microsoft Teams and Skype. Like, this was funny enough, right? Let me just step back for a minute. The one platform that our community is extremely well versed in, no one made any attempts. WhatsApp, no one made any attempts to use WhatsApp from a business perspective. There would have been zero learning curve if you would have told Haitians, let's use WhatsApp. Everybody connect on WhatsApp. No one said, no, let's use this Zoom thing. We could have did this. You can do this on WhatsApp. There's nothing that we're doing here that we can't do on WhatsApp, right? Haitians, a lot of us have gotten very comfortable with Facebook. Facebook owns WhatsApp. But yet we put another barrier in place. We created another learning curve for a group, to everyone's point tonight, that's going through anxiety, that's struggling to communicate with their partners, that's struggling to eat, right? That's facing eviction. So we create these barriers constantly, more and more and more. So I guess the one thing I'd ask you guys is, where do we start? Like, what is a realistic next step? So, and I'll ask this question very directly for all of you. If you were to encounter tomorrow a 61-year-old Haitian, regardless of gender, in a job that is already or going to be threatened by technology and innovation, and also under huge stress by the pandemic, what direction do you even point them in? And examples would be a cashier. Examples would be someone working in a factory. These type of jobs that we as the Haitian community hold very dear, and have helped feed our families. But we know we're under stress. We know we're anxious about when is this going to end? Where do you point them? And let me say this, I don't think any of us have the answer, because it's a massively big question. But I think just throw something out, if anything that sticks. I mean, I almost feel like, let's just spitball for 3 minutes. Maybe something sticks and it helps somebody. I really, I think for me, the most disappointing thing is that I fancy myself as someone who can solve problems. I have no clue where to start.
From my industry, and I usually say this as a joke, but I honestly more and more, and I'm going to say this, but I do also understand that not everyone has the ability to actually do this. But I wish that more of us had the willingness. people need to move. People who live in South Florida, honestly, and I thought about this earlier when we were talking about real estate. South Florida, honestly, I do not have any great practical advice to give to lower middle class, and I say middle class, lower middle class people who are hoping to acquire a piece of land here, whether something other than possibly a townhouse or a condo. Most people, and especially if we're talking about, Black and brown people, we want, the American dream is a house. It's something with it's your little piece of land. It's a little yard, a little front yard, or whichever. I honestly, and there might be some much more intelligent people out there who may have some other perspective to share, and I gladly would receive it. But honestly, if we've had the willingness, in order to get to South Florida, you came from somewhere unless you were born here. You came from somewhere. You might have come here when you were, in your 20s, but you came from somewhere, quite honestly. And it may not seem feasible, and it might not be. South Florida is not the place if you are living on minimum wage. I'd move to Central Florida. I'd move to other parts. Your willingness to come here from where we came from, I would dig down deep. Honestly, there are other places to live in these here United States where I am not renting an efficiency for $1,100. And that's my real estate hat. I honestly do not think that we all should be trying to live here, quite honestly. Because one of the things that happens with South Florida is it's not simply we workers who are competing, we people who live here and work here who are competing for the pieces of real estate. South Florida attracts people, and it attracts foreigners. It attracts people from other places that are that are accustomed to higher dollar amounts. People are moving here from New York. On average, you're spending $400,000 or $500,000 for a home in New York. So you come to South Florida for what you may be getting. It makes more sense for you. So what we're competing with as homegrown people, or people that are working minimum wage or somewhere close to it, and you've been in South Florida for life or for however long, quite honestly, other people are coming in and they're making offers and wiping us off the map. We're looking for 3.5% down, and people are coming down and putting 20% or buying cash. My real estate hat says, quite honestly, it's a hard pill to swallow. Some of us need to be willing to go places where our dollar will go further.
So, I mean, in essence, what I hear you saying is, in South Florida, you can't ascend to shit, basically, to any height.
And I hate being so morbid about it, as if there's no hope. The numbers are not favorable.
No, but I mean,
numbers are not favorable to us that are.
No, I want to stop you for 1 second, because I don't think you're being unrealistic. I don't think you're being hopeless. I mean, let's be honest. If you in the world, if we say that generally, right, the what is it, like, you can buy a house for 3 times your income technically and feel like okay. If you make
a third of your income, yes,
a third.
You should
So if you
spend
make
no more than a third of your monthly income should go towards your housing.
Okay, so if you make $20 an hour, which by many means for people in South Florida is a significant amount of money, right? So and if you happen to be married, right, or with a partner, right, and that's what, $40 an hour, right? Together, y'all each make about $20. That's $40 an hour. So what's that? That's about 80 grand a year. So that times 3, that's 240. So based on the numbers you said, you're still short 70 grand. And you ain't even buy a couch yet. Okay. So, okay. So I don't think you're being unrealistic, but I think that at least, for our community, faut nous commencer à garder ça vraiment. Faut nous commencer au moins parler de ça. Faut nous commencer au moins parler entre nous si son bagay ki possible. Après, parce que, I don't know, nous connaissons haïtien, nous aimons ça qui prend nous. Nous aimons connaître côté nous pour aller. Nous aimons notice deuxième là. Après, nous aimons 79e là. Nous aimons 93 là. Right? We like these things that are so familiar to us. Nous aimons notre côté n'acheton pâté codé. Right? Nous pas ça Georgia, pas ça Texas. You know, so we go to these places where familiarity matters, and it's important, right? To have community is important, but the other pieces, can we at least begin talking about what something else looks like? Because, you know, I think Shirley made a great point earlier. These industries are quickly overtaking us, quickly. But the truth is that it might be a slower wave if you're in a place where you know, have a bit of a head start. So I want Shirley to take the question, but right before Shirley does, you know, Saya, I have a question for you, right? We're here, n'a parlé thérapie, pas vrai? N'a parlé communication, tout ba sa yo. On sou pa gen l'argent pour ça. Sou nan pandemic lan, ou non efficiency wa paye $1,100 par mois, I'm well said, right? Ou an de kayou avec peut-être un homme ou une femme en vérité qui capable peut-être louer en bas coup de pied, right? So ba la dangereux, ba la pas bon même pour, il pas bon pour petit tout. Yo, why am I even considering therapy, and how the hell do I afford therapy? Because my wife and I go to therapy, right? But again, we do okay. $25 a session, nous là, nous gain assurance, Aetna bon, Aetna payé. Bon, even Aetna said no copay during COVID. So, you know, free ou libre net, nous sous libre là, juste janvier. But for people that don't even have insurance, where do they start? Because if I can't eat, why is my mental health even something I should be considering?
Because it affects everything. Your mental health, although because of the stigma, we don't want to say it, but your mental health, the state of your mental health affects everything. Now, when it comes to affordability, there are so many different resources, but the thing is that some of us don't know what those resources are. That I can say. They're for certain therapists, they have slots. I've had slots. I've had clients, you know, without, you know, outing any of my clients and maintaining their confidentiality. I've had clients who've lost their jobs during this pandemic. Now, for me personally, I made the choice for those clients. You can't continue to pay. You're going to continue to come to therapy. I'll deal with the back end.
Yeah.
You're going to continue to go. So there's some therapists who do provide that. There, like you said, there are therapists who are on insurance panels who do take insurance. There are some insurance companies, even though some of them, I look at them sideways, but there are some insurance companies who provided like resources. And for those who don't have insurance, there are places who provide free therapy. But again, of course, you have to find out, you know, what those resources are. I know you can call 211. I've had to like find resources for other people, and by calling 211, and they've been able to give me the different programs to be able to give to other people to go, you know, to go to those therapists. They have open path. Let's say I think between $30 and $60 a session. There's some therapists who are great therapists who are on open path. But again, it's like, of course, having that resource and also asking. When you do call that therapist, don't be afraid to ask. I've heard it in certain clients' voice when we have that first call, and like I ask them straight up, like, my fee, is it aligned with your financial goals during this time? And if it's not, let me help you find someone. Not that I don't want to work with you, because of course, you know, I have to have a limit of like free.
Of course.
I say, qui est-ce qui paye payer billion si me fait tout to therapy free. But but if I'm not the best person for you right now, let me help you find someone. So of
That's
course, yeah, it's finding that resource.
that's really helpful. I
Mhm.
guess, Shirley, I'd like you to take the previous question, but I'd also like to ask Shirley, have you and your husband and your son, have you guys ever considered moving? Has that ever been something, Tom Morell's point, has that ever been something that's on the table for you in general or even come up during COVID? Oh, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. My husband is from up north. So there's always this conversation of maybe we should move up north. And I'm like, I don't do cold. This diva can't handle snow. So I have to own up to that. But part of that conversation before I answer the question is the reason it's so hard for people to move, especially the older generation that we were talking about, right? We have to consider their support systems. So law Miami, law Orlando, law New York, Conseil de Côté, that has the support system so that, people that remind you of home. There's the language issues. There's the place you can walk in, par exemple, gon centre là, que l'on paraît, ou pas besoin d'un gourmet pour coller les pieds sont anglais ensemble to say what you need, because so a lot of their inability to move isn't because they don't realize, and many of them try it and come right back. Right? They leave, they go out, and they take a step of faith. When Sebring was coming up, when all these other places were coming up, many people did it. And then they all came running right back home. When there was a moment where the flood was Georgia. Everybody was running to Georgia. They came running right back home again, because it's one thing to find the house. It's one thing for the cost of living. But what I find with our Haitian community, that sense of support, that sense of knowing, like you said, in 1979, là pour m'acheter ton pâté, that means a lot to them, where it may not be as important to us because it's easier for us to get up and go because we know we can recreate it somewhere else, right? So I think we always want to remember that when we're talking about the older community. And then to answer two parts of the question, what are some ideas that we want to think about for a 61-year-old who has to come out of this pandemic, right? Maybe we should consider a cross training with a 16-year-old. Because the reality is a lot of our 16-year-olds don't have what they need either to make it in this real world, whether it be mannerism, the etiquette, the hands-on, because they're so technologically savvy. Let's create these programs where the young person can navigate them through the technological stuff, whether it's through Facebook or WhatsApp, while it is a cross-training of information. Both of them end up learning on the other end. Just an idea, since we were just throwing things out.
It's a great
because
idea.
I think we help both sides at that point, because there's also a reality that there's a lot less kids applying to colleges. So what are we gonna do with them, right? That means they've got to go into tech schools. They've got to go into a lot of other avenues that will not give them that quote unquote college education. So maybe this is where a hands-on experience with an older person, qui bat la vie, for lack of a better term, can actually help them while the other person too is learning from them. And then give them some community service hours out of it so that they feel like they're getting something they could apply it for graduation. It's got to be mutually beneficial and it's transactional. But I think the other part that I want to answer is from a parent. Let's just say a parent who's got to survive and try to figure out, how do I survive COVID, right? And I know that's one of the points that Sandra wanted me to address when I was asked to come on. We need to understand, as parents, we need to be very honest with our kids about what we're feeling. I'm just as scared as you are. Right? Because our kids sense it. Our kids react to what we think they don't understand. They see it, they see our worry, they worry even more. And I see that in my son. I may be thinking about something and the first question is, Mommy, are you okay? Is everything okay? Did somebody catch COVID? So the fear is there. The anxiety is there for them. The other thing that I would want to say, as far as a parent who's trying to make it, don't try to make it on your own. The systems are there. You may not want to go to the government, but there are, as Sarah was saying, there are resources that are available in the community. And I know because of us, our pride oftentimes stops us, surtout sur someone that's never gone to ask for help before. I've always had it together. So we're always thinking in our head, if I go ask for help, which is why we got a lot of people that won't go to the food line, but they'll go get the gift card because it's a perception for them.
Correct.
Right? Our pride oftentimes stops us. So as a parent that may be suffering, don't suffer in silence and don't suffer by yourself, because we're all going through the pandemic. Schools, if you don't want to go to a community, the school systems have created all of these safety nets. Broward County Public School System, Dade County Public School System, Palm Beach, they have counselors, they have, you name it, they have it. They have support for, you know, if you're homeless. I mean, there's a plethora of services, but if we're not asking, then that's why we're often saying in the community, son série de moun k'ap bénéficier, because c'est moun sa yo k'ap mande.
Yeah.
Right? They're the ones also utilizing the resource. So when it comes time, that's who gets first dibs, because we're not asking and we're not using it. So for a parent who's suffering, you don't know what to do with technology, call the school. Get moun ki parle créole that's more than willing to help. You don't understand, you need to speak to a teacher. Like Saya was saying, you're overwhelmed with all of the information. The app isn't working, Dojo isn't. Call the school. That's what they're paid to do. Call them and put them to work. If it's a matter of you're losing your job, mental health, or health issue, there are resources in the community. We need to encourage the people in the community to utilize them. We have people that have put their lives on the line for the community, but it becomes problematic when they're putting their lives on the line. If you say, lot moun ka bénéficier, because we won't go help, we won't go ascertain the help, because of our pride. I think avec COVID, it really is about each one teach one and each one reach one. And I like to say, you may not be a parent, right? But you know someone who's a parent who has a kid that you can reach out and say, hey, do you need any help? You need me to kind of tutor? Because that's how we help build a community that moves us past COVID, or at least sustains us to get us on the other side of COVID.
You know, those are such good points, and I think your idea is wonderful. And I think that it's important for us to remember we have enough of a Haitian community on these platforms to push for some of these things to happen, right? We can push for, you know, Facebook to give us $10 million to create a program where Haitian youth and adults are combining. And even if we can't get that, right, we can start that ourselves. There are things that we can do on our own. I think that's a wonderful idea. I also think—
let me add just one, if you don't mind. Let me add just one, just to piggyback off of Shirley adding what resources are out there. There was a recent article that showed that Miami-Dade County still had millions of dollars in rent assistance. Because things were so bad, a lot of people actually, I think, thought that things were depleted, and there were still, and this was earlier this month, I want to say, that they still had money that had not been allocated that was part of rent assistance. So like Shirley was saying, if you're going to stay, if you're not leaving, there are oftentimes more resources out there than we actually do know about. And it, like Shirley said, if we ask, go out there and actually figure out what's there. I'm hoping, being that we're towards the end of the year, I'm hoping some of these things will be renewed, because a lot of them were going away at the end of this month, beginning of the year. But keep an eye out. Puisque nous toutes, peut-être que si moun la kay nou ki habite avec Google, ki habite avec computer, you really use those resources. Our parents used us. They took us to every doctor's appointment and explained every bill. Nouveau génération, si nou gen ti moun la kay nou ki peut-être nou même nou pa ka faire research la sou Google, sur internet, mais checker rent assistance, checker eviction help, gen aide yo, gen avocat ka bay tan yo pour aider moun rete nan kay yo. Même le gouvernement pas encore réellement jouer un programme pour aider tout le monde, mais gen ressources de yo qui ka peut-être nous ka peut-être pas penser gagner qui a aider nous. Caleb Center is still very much a popular place. I've had more than one of my, especially my Section 8 tenants, have been bringing me programs that are, hey, you know, do you guys accept this? Because this is what's out there. And several people have said to me that they've gone through the Caleb Center sous 54 la Nord-Ouest 22e Avenue. They've been there for years, and they're still a part of what's helping the community. So.
And I think also, you know, I mean, Denya is in a pays à government center. Nous kon ki jan pou nou monter sous 3, sous 9, sous 16, sous H la, sous G a, sous 21, sous 2 a. Nous kon ki jan pou nou descend downtown. Alors, al mande, you know, fè enquête là and see what happens. You know, at this point, I think, to Shirley's point, we don't have the opportunity, we don't have the privilege to not be asking. And I think what happens oftentimes, and this is really a thing of, interestingly enough, newer generation Haitians, or Haitians who might be in a better position, we think we know too damn much, so we don't ask, right? And then you have Haitians who might be in an older generation. We're worried about what others are thinking, so we don't ask. So ultimately, you have this whole massive community, regardless of where you fall on the financial spectrum, not asking and not advocating and not using what's out there, right? We just don't. You know, we think, oh well, we'll just Google it. Okay, we Google it, we come up with something, and and then we're like, okay, I'm enough. Meanwhile, like to Hamel's point, there are millions of dollars left on the table. And I guarantee you, Amro, that's not only for someone who's struggling, who didn't know that. Someone who was doing really well didn't know that. None of us asked. And I think at some point as a community, we have to address, you know, I mean, besides talking about the mental health piece, we have mental health piece, we have to address kote sa soti nan nou. Est-ce que son fierté? Est-ce que nous want mande, nous want faire enquête là? Like what a, you know, something about us is saying, don't ask. Something about us, in us, is saying, no, I know too much already. Mwen se m'kone toi, mwen son connaisseur, ou yo pa ka di mwen yen. But it's impossible. We're failing ourselves, we're failing each other, and we're falling behind. You know, I mean, we've made great strides as a Haitian community, but the fact of the matter is, anyone will tell you, behind most of the other immigrant communities, we're very far behind. We're very far behind. Now, there are reasons for that. Absolutely, there are reasons for that, many of which are outside of our control. But I think there are definitely some of those reasons can be linked to us not asking and us not making it very clear, you know, what we're looking for. And I think that definitely has to change. I wanted to know also, go ahead, Shirley, go ahead, please.
No. I guess to the point that you're making, I think as a people, we care so much, and maybe Sarah can speak to this, we care so much about what other people think, right? Qui sa se l'église la pral di, qui sa pasteur pral di. You know, before I go ask Sarah, who I know is a mental health counselor, who may be sitting next to me in the church pew, I can't ask Sarah because first of all, they're going to say, c'est mon fumier. So I'm going to go to the pastor, and the pastor's going to tell me, we're going to pray it out, we're going to do all of that, and yet still the problem remains, right? Parce que nous care de ça l'autre monde dit. One of the things that I often see with the multiple hats I wear when we're doing a lot of giveaways, là que une communauté pagnole, par exemple, the Maseratis come through, the Range Rovers come through, because you know what? They coming to get it. You giving it, we coming to get it. Hialeah, they don't want nobody standing outside, no congregating. But wait a minute, they said rental assistant, then people forgot about COVID, and they were standing at that Hialeah library up on each other, looking like flies, because you know what? Haitien, on the other hand, I have to be mindful, because you know, my neighbor next door, my sister, my this, my that, business. So we live in this community of fair way. Even when things are not the way they are, we want people, even when we're not living the Joneses, we want people to believe that's what we're doing, and then we're dying on the inside. So we rather stay in a relationship where we're being abused. We'd rather give our kids $300 J's when we can't eat, because for nous faire ouais, and it's killing us. It's killing us as a people.
Et puis pendant qu'on a fait ouais blanc Fresh Market avec Whole Foods avec Ibitil. La swipe sous nous. La swipe sous nous à droite à gauche. You know Whole Foods la swipe, la va c'était crabe, la va c'était crevette, la swipe sous nous. Et puis nous-mêmes là, nous pas vle nous. I think that's such a good point. Sarah, can you speak to, you know, what about us? What about Haitians, you know, causes us to be so concerned with what others think about us? Where is that from? If you can.
Okay, let me give a disclaimer. Before I say all of this, I'm not saying all Haitians.
Correct.
Okay.
You know what?
Let me
A handful.
Yes. But generally, because our culture is built on pride, we are taught to be proud of who we are, proud of where we come from, right? But that's great. But think about if that being proud turns into a detriment for you. Parce que m'pa prete la grand goût, gen aide dehors, m'pa pa chercher aide parce que m'pa vle voisin connaît. That's not my problem. We need to change that mindset, because one thing that also, which is great in the Haitian culture, is community, right? And I believe there is power in community. I believe that we thrive in community. So do not be afraid to get the help that you need, because so and so probably did get the help. Ou même où était là. Ou grand goût, ti moun yo grand goût, ou pa gen manger. Mais c'est un l'autre bois, fije a plein manger que
La plein pali a du tole.
ou pa jam tele bay sa African moun se mystère, right? You never know what's going on in somebody else's household. Focus on your household. If you need the help, go get the help. If somebody has something, that's their business. It's the mindset that I've adopted now, where problem po. And that's another thing that I think that we should use as Haitians, right? We are proud of our culture. We should be proud of our culture, but we have so much strength, right? So if you have so much strength, why are you letting what somebody else think of you control your destiny, control how you move in life? Why? Pas fait bail comme ça encore.
That's it.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because speaking of that, AHF, my wife happens to work with AHF, and they were doing a big food giveaway. Yo, me fait go konta madame mwen, because she didn't want me to descend bal pour manger. Yo, mwen ya bay go shopping cart manger, ou même $200-300. Oh, m'vexe. Non, COVID la, faut nous say, si l'argent va me descendre. Oh no, they didn't buy that. So ultimately I didn't go, but yo, si c'est pas voulu m'en bas. So we have about 5 minutes left, but I just want to, before I go around and get final thoughts from everyone, I really just want to thank all of you. I think this has been such an amazing conversation and dialogue. I think the best thing for me about this is it's really focused on our community. It's really focused on, some of the pitfalls, some of the pain points, but also some encouraging things in terms of what we can do, look to as next steps, in terms of where we need to really start speaking up and speaking out for each other. And obviously the thing about this is not ending. We talk about a potential for a vaccine, and, that's one for us, for the 48-year-old Haitian person, for the 59, the 72-year-old Haitian person, that vaccine could be a year and a half away. We'd like to believe that it's right around the corner, but we can't guarantee that. And between now and when that vaccine does come, first of all, we're very finicky about vaccines. We don't know nothing about it. So you're tracking new, so GPS, all of that. So Haitians aren't lining up immediately. But between now and whenever that time comes, we still have to live. And we still have to exist in this post-COVID world or current COVID world. So I guess I'd just like to go around the room for final thoughts. I'll start with Sayad, and then I'll go to Shirley and then to Amara.
I'll start with, since COVID has really increased the level of stress that we have, and given, you some thoughts on how to deal with the stress, and how to deal with productivity shaming, meaning like if during this time you are not able to start a business, you are not able to advance, that's okay. We are in a pandemic. We are all over the world experiencing a pandemic. So if all you can do is go to work, and even if that's even stressful, if all you can do is that, that's it. Don't stress yourself over trying to make it. And it's okay if people are thriving. There are people who are thriving, because remember we talked about, I think Dr. Shirley, you mentioned like the privilege, right? I think, which one? I think it was Amaral or Dr. Shirley, but we talked about the privilege of being able to be home, right? Some people have that, that have that privilege to be home. Some people are thriving. If that's not you, that's okay. You don't need to force yourself to do something that you can't. So when you say advancing, what does that look like for you? And that's all that matters. Pa kite moun fe ou fou.
That's really great. Thank you, Sarah. And Dr. Shirley?
So I'm going to address it in 2 points, or 2 perspectives. From a parent piece, I want to give them a couple of quick pointers. Number one, in this pandemic, we all have fear of the unknown. First, we feared COVID. We didn't know what it was. Now we fear the vaccine. So fearing the unknown is normal, and having that conversation with your child is a necessity. Own up to it. They know it, right? Second, admit the fear. And because that opens the door for your child to tell you what their fears are. Because if you don't know, if they're not, assuming that the child is in a position they're able to communicate it with you, it's important to have your child feel that they are being heard and that you understand, so that you can in turn address the fear or the anxiety that they're feeling. Pay attention to your child's pattern change. If they isolate themselves, if they used to friends, they're not talking to friends, they're spending more time on the phone, whatever. Pay attention to your child's pattern, behavioral changes, because oftentimes that's a sign that they're experiencing something and may not know how to say it, right? So to see you're not home and they're home with someone else, those are red flags that something may be wrong, right? So let's not just take that as, oh, they're just being a teenager. Pay attention and understand the environment that is surrounding you. Know your breaking point. I know a lot of parents right now that are doing this virtual learning. You're working from home, you're helping with the homework, you don't understand the homework, communicating with the teacher is difficult. Know your breaking point and know when to walk away. Because oftentimes, and I'm guilty of that, I start screaming and yelling, and it's not the child, I'm frustrated with the system, and oftentimes the child is feeling it. So know your breaking point, know when to walk away, but more importantly, know when to get help, whether it is mental health, whether it is going to the school, know when to get help because the help is available. Now, as far as relationships from the perspective of a wife, very similar. I'm going to ask people to exercise patience. Right now, everybody's patience is high or patience is low. Your threshold of what you would normally digest, because you're in people's face all the time, you got the same thing. You got to know when to walk away. Pick your battles wisely. If it's a relationship you want to keep, pick your battles wisely. Take some me time. The one thing that I will say to every woman who's listening, who's carrying the baton right now, you definitely need that me time, because as you take care of everyone else, you've got to take time to replenish yourself, because we're in this for the long haul. And in order for us to come out on the other side, it's going to take not just taking care of the household, the kid, the husband, the parents, the extended family, and everything else that you do. If you're not around at the end of this, on the other side of COVID, all of this was for naught. So I encourage everybody, take care of yourself, take care of your family, but more importantly, let's communicate, because communication begins to break down a lot of what we're dealing with.
Those are really great words. Amaral?
I love it. Be kind to yourself. Piggybacking just off of what both of these excellent ladies have shared, both whether you are if whether men or women, whichever, be kind to yourself, because this is unprecedented. This is something that no one alive has been through a similar situation. At the same time, for those who are looking for that other side of encouragement, there are opportunities out there right now. Going into this, you may have had plans to be going in a particular direction. There are people who opened restaurants the month that COVID was beginning. That thing that drove you, or that these plans that you had made for yourself on this particular year, are not dead. They're not. Um, there are opportunities for every loss. There are opportunities if you are to seek them and find them. Now, these things this is not exclusive. It's not as I was sharing earlier, it's not, oh, I've accomplished nothing. During this time, I should have read 1,500 books and finished my dissertation. That's not what this is about. That's the be kind to yourself. We're dealing with something none of us have ever dealt with. And at the same time, if you, or this may be for a different person, people who come out on, people who know how to identify opportunity are often the ones running in when other people are running out, right? There are needs that, who knew that this thing called Zoom would be in our lives moving into the future? Like, I wish that I had bought some Zoom stock in December, in January. We don't know. So although not knowing can definitely be scary, is scary. Not knowing don't let not knowing be paralyzing. The last thing didn't kill you, and this won't either. If you will not be outside of whatever God's will is for you at this time, as scary as it seems right now, where there are relationships that have ended, whether, quite honestly, it might have been for the best. There are relationships that have been kindled. And who knew that during this very dark time that you would find, whether friendships, and they're not always love relationships. Some of the closest people to me are not the people who spend nights in my house and in my bed. And there are relationships that have been cultivated during this time. So be kind to ourselves. Look for the opportunities, and put those two things together. They may seem like they're in odds, but put those two things together. Let's come out on the other side of this better than where we went in. And if all that is you learned through this very difficult time how to be kinder to you, how to speak kinder to yourself. One of my close friends says to me all the time when I'm doing the negative me talk, don't talk about my friend that way. You wouldn't let someone talk about your friend that way. So don't talk about my friend that way. And that is such an encouraging thing. So I encourage all of us, listen, during this time, whether you are doing great or whether you have no idea what comes next, please be kind to yourself, and let's make it over to the other side of this. And the people of the pandemic will come out on the other side better than when we went in.
I think those are such amazing words from all of you. I would just say, if you're someone's partner as a man, make sure you're sharing the responsibility, make sure you're sharing the load. Doing your part is not just enough. So as the one male on the panel, I would say that if you're in a household that you're with someone, make sure you're doing some of that load. This is no longer okay to relegate someone to just washing dishes or cooking and cleaning. You need to make sure that is also a part of this. You're a teammate. You're not the coach or the owner of the team. And I think it's important that we understand that, specifically in our Haitian community. I think the other thing I would say is listen to each other, listen to yourselves. We really, really have great instincts. COVID has forced us to be quiet. So listen to that inner voice, and just be patient and kind, like everyone said. And I think the last thing I'll probably say, just to wrap us up, following soutenu l'autre. We have to help each other. We have to lift each other up. We have to pick each other up, be there for each other, be there for yourselves. And, obviously, if you are in a position where you're earning money, put 10, 15% away if you're able to, right? And obviously even that statement alone is privilege, but if you are able to put a little something away, because if this has taught us nothing, it's taught us that we will need things at times, and then in uncertain times we will need a little something extra. Yes, Amrul, go ahead.
Just one last one. Don't take
Mhm.
yourself too serious. Both
Mhm.
your significant other and your
Correct.
kids are figuring it out too. So don't
Correct.
take yourself too serious. Laugh at yourself as often as you can, because you are
Correct.
just as ridiculous as the people who are not doing what you think they should be doing.
Yeah.
So that helps me a lot. I think we don't fight much because, yeah, you're kind of ridiculous too.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I'd probably say is understand that none of us have this shit figured out. We're all pretending or we're all practicing. That's really what this is. You're pretending or you're practicing. So just do your best, be kind to each other. Thank you so much. Before we go, obviously, please follow Avancing Some. Please share Avancing Some. We always bring great content. And Dr. Shirley is the founder of U-Turn Youth Consulting. I know, so please, Shirley, please put all your information in Facebook, in our group there, or Sancho, please put Shirley's information, because we want people to know how amazing you are and all of the fantastic work you're doing in the community. Shirley teaches. She's an attorney. She'll come to your organization. She'll give, all kinds of great information, and she'll set y'all up. She'll work on social justice stuff for y'all, develop whole curriculums. So please book her. Umbrella is a fantastic realtor. She's out here. She also does taxes. Okay, so tax season is coming up in a minute. So if you're looking for a home, contact Amara. She'll help you. If you have questions about your credit, about where you need to be, about kind of areas you're thinking about, Amara has gone as far as Tampa to help people find homes. She, is amazing with the taxes. So Sancho, please put Amara's information in there. And now we have a new gem in our community, Saya Elise, which is a licensed mental health counselor, and she will get you right. And it's not just going to be like you sitting around with your girlfriends talking and that talking about that's your therapy, just whining therapy. No, Saya's going to make you go there. She's going to get to the root of the issues. She's going to help you come out better and brighter on the other side of things. So again, thank you all so
I think
much.
Saya had a point.
Oh, Saya, you're going to
I
say
think she
something?
did.
Yeah,
Yes.
I wanted to share this. Set healthy boundaries. During this time, a lot of people are working while at home, or things have just changed, and a lot of employers are taking advantage of that, where you work 24/7. You don't work 24/7. Set
Nice.
healthy boundaries with work so you can create a good work-life alignment, and also set healthy boundaries with other people in your life and yourself.
That's a good one. We can all definitely benefit from setting healthy boundaries. So, Sancho, also please put Saya's information in there so you can reach out to her. Papa, I got Monday free, no? From any of these ladies, please don't come here. Oh, m'tétan don avancé, ay besoin conseil pour free. Yo pas gen free là, ok? Pas être à l'argent, nous prenons 4 crédits, nous prenons Venmo, nous prenons crypto, nous prenons dernier bail, mais pas gen free là.
Good
So,
boy, pas gen free, boy, no boy.
exactement. Pas gen free, pas gen PI, pas gen rien là, okay? So anyway, thank you guys for spending your evening with us. We really appreciate it. And I just want to finally say, understand that we only covered a few things, but this pandemic thing is deep, right? It's financially, it's emotionally, it's spiritually impacting, physically. This really has really been a challenge for so many of us in many different ways. And maybe this is a conversation we'll revisit again down the line. Have a wonderful holiday, regardless of what you celebrate or if you don't celebrate. Just enjoy time with your loved ones. Take care of each other, and thank you all. Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye, guys.